man, oh man. Well, Stanley's been inside the warden's cabin now. When he knows that it's air conditioned, so it was nice and cool. When he got there, he said the TV was on, so we know that the warden has a nice, not broken TV that she was watching. And she has some very peculiar nail polish. What is the deal with the nail polish that she puts on her hand when Stanley and Mr. Sir are in her cabin? Right? Rattlesnake venom in the polish. Like, are you kidding me? Ooh, it sounds awful. As long as the nails are dry, there's no issue, right? But if it's wet, like it was when she barely touched Stanley's face and got a little in that cut from the shovel, or when she smacked Mr. Sir and scratched his face, the polish was wet at that point. And if the polish is wet, then that venom gets into your bloodstream, especially if she scratched him. It mixed with his blood. And Mr. Sir started jerking and writhing in pain as this rattlesnake venom went through his body. She crazy! She just used rattlesnake venom on Mr. Sir, just for accusing Stanley of stealing the sunflower seeds, which, to be honest, the sunflower seeds were stolen, right? So he wasn't completely out of line. Jeez, this warden, she's something else, right? But now, we know Mr. Sir won't die. She said that he wouldn't die. Unfortunately for them, Mr. Sir's not going to be happy with Stanley. And he's not going to be happy with any of the other boys either, right? Because he's pretty sure someone else stole the seeds. But Stanley's covering up for them. He is not going to be happy that because of that little stunt, he got scratched with rattlesnake venom. I mean, come on. Would you be happy about it? I'm thinking no. Let's see what happens. This is chapter 21. It was a long walk back to his hole. Stanley looked out through the haze of heat and dirt at the other boys, lowering and raising their shovels. Group D was the farthest away. He realized that once again he would be digging long after everyone else had quit. He hoped he'd finish before Mr. Sir recovered. He didn't want to be out there alone with Mr. Sir. He won't die, the warden had said. Unfortunately for you. Walking across the desolate wasteland. Ooh, vocabulary words. So, the barren land, there's nothing on it. Stanley thought about his great-grandfather. Not the pig stealer, but the pig stealer's son. The one who was robbed by kissing Kate Barlow. He tried to imagine how he must have felt after kissing Kate had left him stranded in the desert. It probably wasn't a whole lot different from the way he felt right now. Kate Barlow had left his great-grandfather to face the hot, barren desert. The warden had left Stanley to face Mr. Sir. Somehow his great-grandfather had survived for 17 days before he was rescued by a couple of rattlesnake hunters. He was insane when they found him. When he was asked how he had lived so long, he said he found refuge on God's thumb. He spent nearly a month in a hospital. He ended up marrying one of the nurses. Nobody ever knew what he meant by God's thumb, including himself. Stanley heard a twitching sound. He stopped in mid-step with one foot still in the air. A rattlesnake lay coiled beneath his foot. Its tail was pointing upward and rattling. Stanley backed his leg away, then turned and ran. The rattlesnake didn't chase after him. It had rattled its tail to warn him to stay away. "Thanks for the warning," Stanley whispered as his heart pounded. The rattlesnake would be a lot more dangerous if it didn't have a rattle, if it didn't have that warning sound. "Hey, caveman," called Armpit. "You're still alive." "What'd the warden say?" asked X-Ray. "What'd you tell her?" asked Magnet. I told her I stole the seeds, said Stanley. Good going, said Magnet. What'd she do? Asked Zigzag. Stanley shrugged one shoulder. Again, just lifting that one. Nothing. She got mad at Mr. Sir for bothering her. He didn't feel like going into details. If he didn't talk about it, maybe it didn't happen. He went over to his hole, and to his surprise, it was nearly finished. Who finished it? He stared at it amazed. It didn't make sense. Or perhaps he did. Since he had taken the blame for the sunflower seeds, he realized the other boys had dug his hole for him. Hey, thanks, he said. Don't look at me, said X-Ray. Confused, Stanley looked around from Magnet to Armpit to Zigzag to Squid. None of them took credit for it. So who dug his hole while he was in the warden's cabin getting in trouble? Yeah. Then he turned to Zero, who had been quietly digging in his hole since Stanley's return. Zero's hole was smaller than all the others. So who dug Stanley's hole for him? Yeah, Zero. So this little boy that Stanley and all the other boys kind of give a hard way to go, right? And Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendanski all give him a hard way to go. But Zero, once he saw that Stanley's hole wasn't going to get dug as fast because Stanley was in the warden's cabin, took it upon himself to dig Stanley's hole for him. How awesome is that? And all Zero had asked Stanley to do was to teach him to read. And Stanley had said no. And Zero still dug his hole for him. Wow. This Zero, he's not nothing. This Zero is really something, isn't he? And we'll figure out more in the next chapter. Until then, happy digging.